In this video lesson, we will take up the second unit, solutions. Let us have a preview of this chapter, what and all we are going to study in this particular chapter. Any chapter begins with the definition, some of the basic terms involved. We classify solutions into different types, learn some of the examples, understand factors affecting the formation of solution. We are going to study some of the laws, say like Henry's law or Raoult's law. We are going to study a number of properties of solutions. Apart from all these, there are lots of numericals and problems associated with each section. This term solution is not at all a new term to you. You have used this in lower classes very often. Copper sulfate solution, glucose solution, hydrochloric acid solution or sulfuric acid solution. But then before we begin with some of the properties and laws, let us revisit the definition and understand some of the basic terms associated with this term solution. When we speak of a glucose solution, suppose I have got 5 grams of glucose in 100 grams of water. So what I will do is, I will take water in a beaker or a container and add glucose into this. Glucose is dissolved in water. Now glucose is a pure substance. Water is also a pure substance. But by mixing glucose in water, I am going to get a mixture. Now this mixture that is formed of glucose and water is a homogeneous mixture. Therefore, if I consider a mixture of pure substances, I might have two categories. One is I might get a homogeneous mixture or I might get a heterogeneous mixture. I mix sand and water, sand plus water. The resulting mixture will be formed in two phases. I'll have a separate layer of sand, I'll have a separate layer of water, and therefore this mixture is a heterogeneous mixture. But then a mixture of glucose and water is homogeneous. Now what do I mean by a homogeneous mixture? In a homogeneous mixture, the composition or concentration as well as the properties will remain uniform. That means if this is a glucose solution now, glucose solution, any portion of this solution will have identical concentration or similar concentration. This solution will form roughly 5% concentration. If I take this portion, then this is approximately a 5% solution. If I take this portion, even this is 5%. So there is uniformity in composition or concentration, and obviously the properties of such a solution also will be similar. When I consider, therefore, the definition of a solution therefore can be defined as a homogeneous mixture of two or more components. I took this example of glucose solution. Glucose was one component, water was the second component. I might have solutions wherein there are more number of components, and more importantly, this mixture should be a homogeneous mixture. If there are two components, as in this example taken, then such a solution formed is referred to as a binary solution. If there are three components, it will be a ternary solution, or four components, it will be a quaternary solution, and so on. Now, in this binary solution, let us try to define the components. What is this component glucose and what is this component water? Now, when I took 5 gram of glucose in 100 gram of water, I understand the composition. 5 gram of glucose, this is a smaller component. This component is the smaller component. It is present in a lesser quantity, smaller component. Whereas water is present in a larger proportion. So this is a larger component. Now this larger component in the binary solution is referred to as a solvent, whereas the smaller proportion glucose, this is referred to as the solute. Therefore, a binary solution is obtained by dissolving a solute in a solvent. I extend this further. If I take a ternary solution, I will observe that there are three components. So let me take component 1, component 2 and component 3. And let me assume that component 3 is present in the largest quantity. So this is the largest quantity. This will be the solvent, whereas the remaining two will be solutes. So in a solution, the largest component will be the solvent, whereas the remaining components will be called as solutes. Let us try to understand the classification or the types of solution based on the physical states of the solute and the solvent. Now in this solution of glucose in water, I observe that glucose is a solid, whereas water is a liquid. Hence, the physical state of the solvent will actually decide the type of solution. Since the physical state is a liquid, glucose solution is referred to as a liquid solution. Let me consider another example. If I take a solution of copper in gold, all of you are familiar with this solution, jewelry gold. If I consider a 22 carat gold, then out of 24 parts which is considered as a standard, 22 parts is of gold, whereas 2 parts is of copper. If I observe the physical states, both of them are solids. Gold is a solid, even copper is a solid. Next, I observe the proportion. I observe that copper is present in a smaller proportion and therefore will be the solute. Gold is present in a larger proportion and therefore will be the solvent. I observe the physical state of solvent. This is a solid, and hence this mixture, homogeneous mixture, a solution, will be classified under a solid solution. So in this way, we will be able to have 9 different categories based on the physical states of the solute and the solvent, and basically 3 types of solutions: liquid solution, solid solution, and you can even have gaseous solutions. Hence, let's try to list out the various categories and understand some of the examples associated with this. So we have the type of solution. We have the physical states of solute and the solvent, and list some of the examples. If the solvent is a solid and solute is also a solid, in the example that we took just now, then such a solution will be a solid solution. And the example of copper in gold, or any alloy for that matter, is a mixture of homogeneous components of various metals. A homogeneous mixture of several metals will form an alloy, which will be classified under a solid solution. If I take a mixture of liquid in a solid, even this will give me a solid solution, and we can have several amalgams. For example, silver amalgam, mercury dissolved in silver will form silver amalgam. Mercury is a liquid, silver is a solid, and therefore is a solid solution. Whenever cavities are formed in our tooth, and when you visit the dentist, he will fill these cavities. So dental fillings will usually consist of amalgam of silver and tin. I might have a gas dissolved in a solid. You might have taken up in organic chemistry reducing reagents, and one way of reduction is catalytic reduction, and you have got hydrogen which is adsorbed over platinum or palladium. Such mixtures are homogeneous mixtures and they form solid solution. Palladium is a solid, it has got interstitial spaces, and hydrogen might be uniformly distributed in these, and therefore these kind of solids are also referred to as interstitial solids. Anyway, let us have a look at the next category of solution, the most common ones which we are going to study extensively in this particular chapter: liquid solutions. So it is understood that the solvent in this category will be liquids. So let me fill these 3 at a stretch. So I might have a solid dissolved in a liquid, or a liquid dissolved in a liquid, or a gas dissolved in a liquid. The example that I began with glucose solution will fall under the first category, solid dissolved in a liquid. So glucose in water or urea in water, sugar in water will form liquid in a liquid. Ethyl alcohol, ethanol in water, it will form a perfectly miscible solution. Under liquid solution you can place this. Gas is dissolved in a liquid. So I have water consisting of dissolved oxygen, and this is the basis for aquatic life. Oxygen dissolved in water. Or I have several carbonated drinks. So soft drinks which we make use of will contain carbon dioxide dissolved in water, which will form a liquid solution. The third category now, I have the gaseous solution. Type is gaseous solution. So what do you have in a gaseous solution? The solvent will be a gas. So I've got three categories once again. I might have a gas dissolved in a gas, or a liquid dissolved in a gas, or a solid dissolved in a gas. Camphor is a solid which sublimes very easily. It undergoes sublimation directly into the vapor phase. Hence, if you have camphor in dinitrogen, an inert gas, it will form a gaseous solution. Liquid in a gas, chloroform is a volatile liquid. It will dissolve in nitrogen and form a gaseous solution. A gas dissolved in a gas, I have nitrogen, oxygen and other components dissolved uniformly in air. Hence, air might be classified under the third category, a gas dissolved in a liquid, which is a gaseous solution. So what we have done till now, we have introduced solutions, understood some of the basic terms like solute and solvent, and went through the different categories of solutions or types of solution, basically solid solutions, liquid solutions and gaseous solutions. It is very important that you understand the composition of a solution, and there are several methods to understand how much of the solute is dissolved in a solvent. It can be expressed in two ways. One is the qualitative method. What do you mean by qualitative method? You just tell that less amount of solute is dissolved or more amount of solute is dissolved, and hence you might express solutions as weak solutions or a strong solution. But then this is a very vague concept and it might lead to a confusion. So you might express solutions as weak solution or dilute solution. So instead of using a weak solution, dilute solution, or a concentrated solution, very dilute or dilute, strong, very strong, and therefore these are not maybe much useful to us, and hence we have to understand quantitative methods of expressing concentration, and why this might be important. Let me take a couple of examples. If I take concentration of fluoride in solutions, I have three examples. One is a solution of fluoride whose concentration is around 1 ppm, parts per million, and this is the composition in toothpaste which is used to prevent decay of tooth, or dental hygiene it is made use of. 1 ppm. But if the concentration is around 1.5 ppm and if this much of fluoride is present in water, then this might cause mottling of teeth. We tell that the teeth becomes mottled, discolored, it might become brownish. So some regions of our state and country wherein drinking water contains higher fluoride concentration, people might experience mottling of their teeth, discoloration of their teeth. If the concentrations are even higher, then it might be poisonous. Say in rat poisons, sodium fluoride or zinc fluoride is made use of. Higher concentration, it is poisonous. So knowing the exact concentration, using the exact concentration is very important. We have intravenous injections administered. Now, if the concentration of the salt solution in which this injection is administered does not match the concentration of the blood plasma, then it might lead to complications, and therefore the concentration of the blood plasma and the concentration of the intravenous injection must be very similar, and therefore it is very important that we understand the quantitative methods of expressing concentration of solutions. Let me make a list of these. So you can express concentration in terms of mass percentage, and you might have seen these kind of symbols, W over W. You might also express this in terms of volume percentage, and the symbol that you might observe is V over V. You might also have mass by volume percent, which is expressed as W over V. You can express concentration in terms of ppm, parts per million. The other methods will be mole fraction, symbol will be chi, or you might have molarity and molality. Now all these methods have been taken up in your first PU, basic concepts of chemistry. You have gone through each method and solved some of the numericals associated with it. But then, for the sake of completeness, let us briefly go through each one of these methods, because in this chapter we are going to use some of these methods extensively, especially mole fraction, molality, whose symbol will be capital M, or molality small m. These remaining methods are useful in their own way, and we have seen all of these in first year classes. First one, mass percentage. How do we understand the concept of mass percent? Let me consider a situation wherein I have got 5 gram of glucose in 95 gram of water. So observe that the mass of the solute is 5 gram. So let me take mass of the solute, which is 5 gram in the numerator, divide this by the total mass of the solution. I find that the total mass is 5 plus 95, which is 100, and I multiply this by 100. So solute is expressed in grams, solvent, the solution also is expressed in grams, and hence you have got mass percentage. Out of 100 we count this, and you will get 5% solution of glucose by mass. Hence, mass percentage of any component, mass percent of a component, any component. So you can express in terms of glucose, you can also express the mass percent of water. It can be given as mass of the component divided by the mass of solution into 100. Just like you have got concentration expressed in terms of mass percentage, you can express in terms of volume percent also. The only difference will be mass of solute is expressed in terms of volume, say milliliter or centimeter cube. Even the mass of solution is expressed in terms of milliliter or centimeter cube, in terms of units of volume. Mass by volume percent also, you have mass expressed for solute, whereas volume for the solution. And you might have seen many of these in our day-to-day life. You have some of the medicinal creams. Say you have got an antifungal cream, and if you have read the label, you will find, say, it consists of 1% of the antifungal medicine, say clotrimazole. It is present in terms of mass percent, and the remaining part will be a cream base whose quantity is sufficient. So cream base will be quantity sufficient quantity to make it to 100%. 1% W by W, the weight of the component, is expressed in terms of grams. Volume percentage, you might have seen various advertisements today. Many of them are with respect to hand sanitizers. So hand sanitizers have become a norm today with this COVID-19 pandemic. Hygiene of the hands is maintained by using hand sanitizers, and they will tell you that this is an alcohol based hand sanitizer, and if you have read the labels, they will tell that it contains 72% of alcohol by volume. So even in many of the medicinal applications or medicines, you have got mass by volume percentage also. Parts per million. So let me give you a brief review of what do you mean by parts per million. Parts per million. The short form will be ppm. Now what is done is, so you have got the mass of the component, or let me express this in terms of number of parts of the component, and let me consider the total number of parts of the solution. So if I take a solution, I express this in terms of a million parts. It is divided into a million parts. It is 10 to the power of 6. Now out of 10 to the power of 6, which is 1 million, I find out how many parts of the component is present. This will be the concentration which is expressed in terms of parts per million. So you can write this as mass of the component divided by the mass of solution and express this in terms of a million parts. But I've seen some of the paints, and the label that is mentioned in the paint will be this does not contain more than 90 parts per million of lead. So a given sample of paint should not exceed 90 parts per million of lead. Lead is a heavy metal, toxic, it might lead to health hazards, and therefore the percentage of lead should not exceed permissible limits, 90 parts per million of lead. What do you mean by this? You take this paint solution and you divide this into 1 million parts, and out of 1 million parts, 90 parts will be of lead. So that is the concentration expressed in terms of parts per million. So with this brief review of the first 4 methods of expressing concentration, let me go through the remaining 3 in greater detail, because these are the ones which we are going to use extensively in this particular chapter. Mole fraction. Mole fraction, the symbol will be chi. Let me consider, say, 2 components in a solution. I have got a binary solution and the components are A and B. This is a binary solution and the components are A and B. I might express the amount of A in terms of number of moles of A. I will write this as N subscript A, number of moles of A. Similarly, number of mole of B will be shown as N subscript B. Now, what do you mean by number of moles? How do you understand the concept of mole? So, mole is the quantity of substance or amount of substance which contains Avogadro number of particles. 6.022 into 10 to the power of 23 particles, if it is present in a given amount of substance, that will be equivalent to 1 mole of the substance. So mole can be expressed in terms of mass divided by molar mass. So 1 gram mole of the substance will be equivalent to the molar mass. Mass by molar mass will give me number of moles, and I have expressed the number of moles of A and B in this particular way. Now I want to define mole fraction for A, mole fraction of the component A. What I do is I take the number of moles of A and I divide this by total number of moles of all the components present in the solution. There are only 2 components, A as well as B. I take the sum of this in the denominator. So the number of moles of A divided by total number of moles will give me the mole fraction for component A. Similarly, mole fraction of component B can be expressed as number of moles of B divided by total number of moles of the components A and B present in the solution, and this can be expressed for n number of components as well. You want to define mole fraction of any component, mole fraction of a component, it can be expressed as number of moles of the component, number of mole of the component divided by total number of moles of all the components present in the solution. Total number of moles of all the components present in the solution. Another aspect that has to be kept in mind is, if I take the sum of the mole fractions of all the components, it will be unity. Sum of mole fractions, sum of mole fraction of all components will be 1. That means if I take mole fraction of component A plus mole fraction of component B, this will be equal to 1. A very important relation which we are going to use later on. But then, just to get some practice, let me solve a problem based on mole fraction. So we have a problem based on mole fraction. So in this problem we have to calculate the mole fraction of ethylene glycol. The molecular formula will be C2H6O2. In a solution containing 20% of ethylene glycol by mass, 20% of ethylene glycol by mass. So you want to find out the mole fraction of ethylene glycol. It can be given as the number of moles of ethylene glycol divided by total number of moles. The number of moles of ethylene glycol plus the number of moles of the other component. So ethylene glycol solution, so they are not mentioned the solvent, it will be water. Ethylene glycol is dissolved in water. So if you want to find out mole fraction of ethylene glycol, you have to first calculate number of moles of ethylene glycol as well as number of moles of water. How do we do this? They have mentioned that the percentage of ethylene glycol is 20 by mass. Hence, let me consider a hypothetical case, an imaginary case wherein 100 gram of solution is taken. 100 gram of solution. I might take any mass, I might take 10 grams or 50 grams or whatever, but for the sake of convenience, let me take 100 grams. Out of 100 grams, they have mentioned that 20% of it, which will be 20 gram, this is ethylene glycol, C2H6O2, whereas the remaining component will be water, and the remaining amount will be 80 gram of water. So I've got the mass of ethylene glycol and the mass of water. With this information, number of moles of ethylene glycol, will be mass divided by the molar mass. Mass of ethylene glycol is 20. What will be the molar mass of ethylene glycol? So I got 2 atoms of carbon, 2 into 12. I've got 6 atoms of hydrogen. So 6 atoms are there. Atomic weight, let me consider approximately equal to 1. There are 2 atoms of oxygen. Atomic weight of oxygen is 16. Hence I will get 62 gram per mole as the molar mass of ethylene glycol is equal to 62 gram per mole. So this is 20 grams, 62 gram per mole. This will be therefore be a value approximately equal to 0.322 mole. So number of moles of ethylene glycol is worked out. So just like I have done for ethylene glycol, number of moles for water has to be worked out. What is the mass of water? 80 grams. What is the molar mass of water? You are quite familiar with this. 1 into 2 plus 16, 18 gram per mole, the molar mass for water, and this will be a value close to 4.444 mole. This has to be now substituted. We come back to the formula for calculation of mole fraction of ethylene glycol. Substitute the values. We have got ethylene glycol 0.322 mole plus in the denominator we have got 0.322 plus 0.444 moles. And I work out this to be 0.068. In this problem, mole fraction of only ethylene glycol is asked, but you could also calculate, if needed, the mole fraction of water. All you have to do is, instead of ethylene glycol, you have to take number of moles of water in the numerator and calculate. There is another method for calculation of number of moles of water. How is this done? We have mole fraction of ethylene glycol plus mole fraction of water. This is equal to 1. So I learned earlier that the sum of the mole fraction of all the components is equal to 1. So if you want to find out mole fraction of water, it can be done easily since mole fraction of ethylene glycol has already been calculated. So this is a problem which is related to calculation of mole fractions. Let us now take up the next method of expressing concentration of solution, which is molarity. Capital M is a symbol that is made use of. Let us first define molarity. Molarity of a solution can be defined as the number of mole of the solute in 1 liter of the solution. 1 liter of a solution. So 1 liter, you can also express this in terms of 1 decimeter cube or 1000 centimeter cube. So what is the number of moles of the solute dissolved in 1 liter of the solution? that will be the concentration expressed in terms of molarity. You can express this in terms of a formula. Molarity is number of mole of the solute divided by volume of the solution expressed in terms of liter. Let me take sodium hydroxide, whose molar mass is 40 gram per mole. If I have a 0.25 molar solution of sodium hydroxide, what does it imply? It implies that 0.25 mole of sodium hydroxide is dissolved in 1 dm cube of the sodium hydroxide solution. How much is 0.25 mole? 1 mole is equivalent to 40 gram, and therefore 1/4 of 40 gram, which implies 10 gram of sodium hydroxide is dissolved in 1 liter of the solution. Let me take a problem to make you familiar with this concept of molarity. A problem from your NCERT text on molarity. So you have to calculate in this particular problem, you have to calculate molarity of a solution containing 5 gram of sodium hydroxide in 450 milliliter of the solution. So what do we need? Basically, molarity of the solution. You have got 5 grams of sodium hydroxide. So from this we can calculate number of mole of the solute. Volume of the solution is also given, but expressed in terms of milliliter. Number of moles of sodium hydroxide. Number of mole of sodium hydroxide will be given by mass by molar mass. Mass is 5 gram. Molar mass of sodium hydroxide is 40 gram per mole. So you have got volume of the solution. Volume of the solution is 450 milliliter, but then you have to express this in terms of liter. So therefore this is 1000 milliliter per liter. So that will be the volume of the solution in terms of liters. We have the molarity of the solution, therefore expressed in terms of mole of sodium hydroxide divided by volume of solution in liters. This will be 5 by 40 divided by molarity. You'll get a value of close to 0.278 mole per liter. With this, we will move on to the next method of expressing concentration. Molarity we have gone through, mole fraction is done. The next one will be molality. Molality, lowercase m is a symbol that is made use of. Let us define molality first. Number of mole of solute present in 1 kilogram of the solvent. What is the number of mole of the solute which is dissolved in 1 kg of the solvent to form a solution? That will be the concentration expressed in terms of molality. Hence, the formula that can be listed will be number of mole of the solute divided by mass of the solvent, expressed in terms of kilogram. Let us solve a problem to illustrate how concentration can be expressed in terms of molality. कट ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. Here we have a problem from your NCERT text to understand the concept of molality, and in this particular problem you have to find out the molality of 2.5 gram of ethanoic acid dissolved in 75 gram of benzene. So you will observe that ethanoic acid or acetic acid is present in smaller proportion, is the solute, whereas benzene is a solvent, it is present in a larger proportion. Hence, if you want to find out the molality of this particular solution, then you have to take the number of moles of ethanoic acid, number of moles of the solute, divided by volume of the solvent, which is benzene, but in terms of kilograms. Now, what will be the number of moles of ethanoic acid? Mole is given by mass by molar mass. What will be the molar mass of ethanoic acid? You can observe that the formula is C2H4O2. So I got 2 atoms of carbon, 12 will be the atomic weight, 4 atoms of hydrogen are there, atomic weight will be 1. We'll have 2 atoms of oxygen, atomic weight will be 16, and therefore you will get the molar mass of ethanoic acid as 60 gram per mole. Hence, number of mole of ethanoic acid will be mass by molar mass. Mass of ethanoic acid is 2.5 grams divided by molar mass of ethanoic acid, we have worked out just now, 60. Benzene is a solvent, 75 gram of benzene is there, but then you have to express this in terms of kilograms. 1 kilogram is equal to 1000 grams, and therefore 75 divided by 1000 will give you the mass of benzene in terms of kilograms. When you substitute and get the result, it will be close to 0.556 mole per kilogram. So that is how you express molality, number of moles of ethanoic acid per kilogram of the solvent benzene. Cut. You have therefore gone through several methods of expressing concentration. You got mass percent or molality, mole fraction, parts per million or molarity. Each method will have its own merits and demerits. Depending upon the convenience, you may have to use a particular method of expressing concentration. For example, if the amount of substance is in trace quantities, then you may have to go in for parts per million. If you need relative number of moles of the solute and solvent, then you may have to go in for a method like mole fraction. Parts per million would be for trace quantities, relative number will be mole fraction, and so on. But then there is one important factor that has to be considered. You will observe that all of these methods up till parts per million, we have mass or number of moles, and mass or number of moles is a temperature independent quantity, and if a change in temperature is not going to affect the values of these concentrations. But molarity is dependent on volume. So you remember the definition, number of moles of the solute divided by volume of the solution. So molarity will be dependent on volume. So it's a volume dependent quantity, and volume depends on temperature. Volume depends on temperature. So if you increase the temperature, the volume of the solution might expand and the molarity will come down. Hence, we have molarity, a method of expressing concentration, which is a temperature dependent method of expressing concentration. A very likely question for exams. So they'll ask you, give a method of expressing concentration which is independent of temperature.